Hey guys, it's Chris and Alicia. It's time for the kids lesson, so go ahead and grab your Bibles and come on back, and we'll get started. Okay, last week we talked about the book of Genesis, and there we learned how God created the world and it was perfect until people decided to disobey God, and that's when sin and death came into the world. But God still loved us, so he had a plan. And that plan started by making a very serious promise to Abraham, a promise that he would bless the whole world through his family. Now let's turn to the book of Exodus, which is what we're going to be looking at today. And we're going to look at chapter 20, verses 1 through 3. Let's go ahead and read that together.
Then God spoke all these words, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the place of slavery. Do not have other gods besides me.
Okay, and as we go through our lesson, we're going to learn 3 big picture questions. That's not the first one. Here's the first one. Is there anything that God can't do? What is God like? And what is worship?
Okay, well, we learned about the covenant with Abraham and God, and we're going to learn more about Abraham's family. Abraham had a grandson named Joseph, and Joseph had a lot of brothers. And unfortunately, Joseph's father liked him more than he liked all of the other sons. And this made his brothers very jealous, and they decided they want to kill him. Well, they thought that might be too harsh, so then they decided, yeah, let's just sell him to slavery. And they did, and he was a slave for 20 years. Well, through God, he was able to become an important leader under the Pharaoh, which is just a really fancy name for a king. And he was able to save his family through a period of famine, which is there's not much food. And through saving Joseph's family, he was able to save Abraham's family, the whole line of Israelites. So he was able to keep his promise that way. So during the next few hundred years, the Israelites started to grow in number, and so much so the Egyptians were afraid that there were going to be too many Israelites. So the Pharaoh decided to make the Egyptians, the Israelites, slaves again, and he started treating them very harshly. And in fact, he even made a law saying that the Israelites had to kill all of their baby boys. Well, you might think at this time that God forgot his promise with Abraham, but he didn't. But God is powerful and he can do all things. And even when things go wrong, in fact, God can do anything as long as it's good. So, some of the women that loved God, they ignored this evil king's law to kill their babies. And one of them put a baby in a basket and put him in the river. Can you guess what this little baby's name is? Yeah, that was Moses. And Moses grew up in Egypt. He was rescued by the Pharaoh's daughter, and he was raised in Egyptian kingdom. And he grew up to hate how the Egyptians were treating the Israelites, because truly the Israelites were his people. And one day he saw an Egyptian treating an Israelite man very badly, and Moses became angry and killed the man. Well, he got really scared because you're still not allowed to kill someone back then. And he ran away for 40 years outside of Egypt. And then one day God spoke to him from a burning bush. That'd be kind of scary, huh? But it's God, so it's okay. And he told Moses to go back to Egypt because Moses was going to save the Israelites. Well, even though Moses was scared, he did what God called him to do, and he saved his people. When the king refused to let the Israelites go, God caused all kinds of plagues to happen. Remember how Margie and LaDonna and Grady and Jerry taught you about this in our lessons with the frogs and the dead fish and the dead animals? Well, the king kept refusing to free the Israelites. So God decided to send a very serious consequence, a very serious plague. He was going to kill the oldest son in every Egyptian family, To keep this from happening to the Israelites, God told them to sacrifice a lamb and to put the blood over their doors. That way, when an angel saw it, they would pass over their house. That's why it's called Passover, and that's what we learned about during the Seder Fest. I can never say that word very well. So after that night, the Pharaoh decided to let the Israelites go.
And you might think that would have been the end of it. But after they left, Pharaoh changed his mind again, and he sent his army after the Israelites. And just when the Israelites were about to be destroyed by the Egyptian army, God split the Red Sea in half so that the Israelites could just walk right through on dry land. Do you remember when Elizabeth put down the big red blanket that represented the Red Sea? Well, the Egyptians tried to follow them, but the water closed back together and all of the Egyptians in the army died. So God had saved the Israelites. And they were so excited that they even sang a song that tells us what God is like. It talks about how God is holy and good and loving. And you can read about that song with your family in Exodus chapter 15. Well, once they were all safe, God told them to go to a mountain called Mount Sinai. And once they got there, he met them in a very special and scary way. But he also wrote down the 10 Commandments for them. And most of all, that's where he reminded them of the promise he made to Abraham. So just like with Abraham, he made a very serious promise to the people of Israel. That's right, he made a covenant. And just like with Abraham, he said he was going to bless the whole world through their family. Well, as a special sign of the covenant, he told them to make a very special tent called the tabernacle, where he would meet with them in a very special way. And some of you might remember the little tabernacle we brought back to class a long time ago. And some of you might remember making a really big tabernacle in the classroom with Mel and Julie. Well, the tabernacle was a special place where God taught his people how to worship. And worship is just celebrating how great God really is. And if you remember, that's also the place where animals were sacrificed. So even though they had sinned, they could still be with God. Well, the tabernacle wasn't meant to last forever, because one day God would come to meet with his people in a different but even more special way. He would send his son Jesus Christ to meet with them. And one day, like those animals, but way better, he would die on the cross as a sacrifice so that the people who have sinned could still be with God. Now let's see how you did answering those big picture questions.
Is there anything that God cannot do? God can do anything as long as it is good. What is God like? God is holy, good, and loving. What is worship? Worship is celebrating how great God is. Guys, I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. Love you.
Goodbye.